Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Irataho Nandra Pulinda Pukasha. Abhira Shumba Yavanaka Sadaya. Yenye Papa Yara Pashraya Shraya. Shudyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha. Kirataho Nandra Pulinda Pukasha. Abhira Shumba Yavanaka Sadaya. Yenye Papa Yara Pashraya Shraya. Shudyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha. Kirataho Nandra Pulinda Pukasha. Abhira Shumba Yavanaka Sadaya. Yenye Papa Yara Pashraya Shraya. Shudyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha.
Kirata Punandra Pulinda Pulkasha.
Kirataho Nandra Pulinda Pukasha.
Abhira Shumba Yavanaka Sadaya.
Abhira Shumba Yavanaka Sadaya.
Yenye Chapapa Yarapashraya Shraya.
Yenye Papa Yara Pashraya Shraya.
Shriyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha.
Shudyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha. Hare Krishna. Kiratahun Hunandra Pulindi Pulkasha. Kirataho Nandra Pulinda Pukasha. Abhira Shumba Yavanaka Shandayaha. Abhira Shumba Yavanaka Sadaya. Yanai Chapapa Yara Pashraya Shraya. Yenye Papa Yara Pashraya Shraya. Shudyanti Tasmai Prabha Vaishnave Namaha. Shudyanti Tasmai Prabha Vaishnave Namaha.
Kirathunandara Pulinda Prukasha.
Kirataho Nandra Pulinda Pukasha.
Abhira Samba Yavana Kasha Sadaya.
Abhira Shumba Yavanaka Sadaya.
Nye Chapapa Yada Pasharya Parashaya.
Yenye Papa Yara Pashraya Shraya.
Sudyanti Tasai Prabhava.
Shudyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha.
Kiratahon Nandra Pulinda Pulkasha.
Kirataho Nandra Pulinda Pukasha.
Avira Shumbha Yavanaka Sadaya.
Abhira Shumba Yavanaka Sadaya.
Ye nye cha papa yadapashraya
Ye nye ca papa yarapashraya shraya.
Shubhyanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha.
Shrudyanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha.
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Kirata unandra pulinda pukasha.
Abhira Shumba Javana Kashatayaha
Abhira shumba yavanaka sadaya.
Yenye Chapapa Yad Apashrayashvayaha
Yenye ca papa yarapashraya shraya.
Sudhiyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha
Shrudyanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha.
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Kirata unandra pulinda pukasha.
Abhira Shumba Yavana Kasadaya
Abhira shumba yavanaka sadaya.
Yanaya Cha Papa Yadapashraya Shraya
Yenye ca papa yarapashraya shraya.
Suryanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Nama
Shuryanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha.
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Kirata hunandra pulinda pukasha.
Abhira Sumhayavana Khashadaya
Abhira shumba yavanaka sadaya.
Yenecha Papayad Apashaya Ashaya
Yenye ca papa yarapashraya shraya.
Suthayanti Tasmaya Prabhavishnave Nama
Shuryanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha.
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Kirata hunandra pulinda pukasha.
Abhira Shumba Yavana Kashadayaha
Abhira shumba yavanaka sadaya.
Yenye Chapapa Yadapashraya
Yenye ca papa yarapashraya shraya.
Shudyanti Tasmai Prabha Vishnave Namaha
Shuryanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha.
Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha
Kirata hunandra pulinda pukasha.
Abhira Shumbhayavana Kasadaya
Abhira shumba yavanaka sadaya.
Yenye Chapapa Yadapashraya Shraya
Yenye ca papa yarapashraya shraya.
Shubhyanti Tasmai Prabhavishnave Namaha
Shuryanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha. Kirata hunandra pulinda pukasha. Abhira shumba yavanaka sadaya. Yenye ca papa yarapashraya shraya. Shuryanti tasmai prabhavishnave namaha. Kirata, a province of old Bharata. Huna, part of Germany and Russia. Andhra, a province of southern India. Pulinga, the Greeks. Pulkashaha, another province. Abhira, part of old Sindh. Shumbaha, another province. Yavanaha, the Turks. Kasa Adayaha, the Mongolian province. Yea, even those. Anye, others. Cha, also. Papa, addicted to sinful acts. Yet, whose? Apashraya ashrayaha, having taken shelter of the devotees of the Lord, Shuddhanti, at once purified. Tasmai, unto him, Prabhu Vishnave, unto the powerful Vishnu, Namaha, my respectful obeisances. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: Kirata, Huna, Andhra, Pulinda, Ukasha, Abira, Shumbha, Yavana, members of the Kasa races, and even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, due to His being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. And if at any time Maharaj would like to speak, we would all be very much enlivened to hear from Maharaj. So purport. Kirata, a province of old Bharat Varsh mentioned in the Bhishma Parva of Mahabharata. Generally, the Kiratas are known as the aboriginal tribes of India, and in modern days, the Santal Parganas in Bihar and Chota Nagpur might comprise the old province named Kirata. Huna, the area of East Germany and part of Russia, is known as the province of the Hunas. Even today we have like Hungary, Hungary, on the Hungarian region, things like that. So that's just an interesting connection. Accordingly, sometimes a kind of hill tribe is known as the Hunas. Andhra, a province in southern India mentioned in the Bhishma Parva of Mahabharata. It is still extant under the same name. Pulinda, it is mentioned in the Mahabharata, Adi Parva 174.38, the inhabitants of the province of the name Pulinda. This country was conquered by Bhishma Sena and Sahadev. The Greeks are all known as Pulindas, and it is mentioned in the Vanaparva of the Mahabharata that the non-Vedic race of this part of the world would rule over the world. This Pulinda province was also one of the provinces of Bharata, and the inhabitants were classified amongst the Kshatriya kings. But later on, due to their giving up the Brahminical culture, they were mentioned as Mlechas, just as those who are not followers of the Islamic culture called Kafirs, and those who are not followers of the Christian culture are called heathens. Abira. This name also appears in the Mahabharata, both in the Sabha Parva and Bhishma Parva. It is mentioned that this province was situated on the river Saraswati in Sindh. The modern Sindh province formerly extended on the other side of the Arabian Sea, and all the inhabitants of that province were known as the Abiras. They were under the domination of Maharaj Yudhisthira, and according to the statements of Markandeya, the Mlechas of this part of the world would also rule over Bharata. Later on, this proved to be true, as in the case of the Pulindas. On behalf of the Pulindas, Alexander the Great conquered India, and on behalf of the Abiras, Muhammad Ghori conquered India. These Abiras were also formerly Kshatriyas within the Brahminical culture, but they gave up the connection. The Kshatriyas who were afraid of Parashurama and had hidden themselves in the Caucasian hilly regions later on became known as the Abiras. The place they inhabited was known as Abira Desha. Shumbhas and Kankas, the inhabitants of the Kanka province of Old Bharata, mentioned in the Mahabharata. Yavanas. Yavana was the name of one of the sons of Maharaj Yayati, who was given the part of the world known as Turkey to rule. Therefore, the Turks are Yavanas, due to their being descendants of Maharaj Yavana. The Yavanas were therefore Kshatriyas, and later on, by giving up the Brahminical culture, they became Mlecha Yavanas. Descriptions of the Yavanas are in the Mahabharata, Adi Parva 85.34. Another prince called Turvasu was also known as Yavana. and his country was conquered by Sahadeva, one of the Pandavas. The western Yavana joined Duryodhana in the battle of Kurukshetra under the pressure of Karna. It is also foretold that these Yavanas also would conquer India, and it proved to be true. Kasa, the inhabitants of the Kasa Desha, are mentioned in the Mahabharata Jona Parva. Those who have a stunted growth of hair on the upper lip are generally called Kasas. As such, the Kasas are the Mongolians, the Chinese, and others who are so designated. The above mentioned historical names are different nations of the world. Even those who are constantly engaged in sinful acts are all corrigible to the standard of perfect human beings if they take shelter of the devotees of the Lord. Jesus Christ and Muhammad, two powerful devotees of the Lord, have done tremendous service on behalf of the Lord on the surface of the globe. And from the version of Srila Shukadev Goswami, it appears that instead of running a godless civilization in the present context of the world situation, if the leadership of world affairs is entrusted to the devotees of the Lord, for which a worldwide organization under the name and style of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness has already been started, then by the grace of the Almighty Lord, there can be a thorough change of heart in human beings all over the world, because the devotees of the Lord are able authorities to effect such a change by purifying the dust-worn minds of the people in general. The politicians of the world may remain in their respective positions because the pure devotees of the Lord are not interested in political leadership or diplomatic implications. The devotees are interested only in seeing that the people in general are not misguided by political propaganda, and in seeing that the valuable human life of a human being is not spoiled in following a type of civilization which is ultimately doomed. If the politicians, therefore, would be guided by the good counsel of the devotees, then certainly there would be a great change in the world situation by the purifying propaganda of the devotees, as shown by Lord Chaitanya. As Shukadev Goswami began his prayer by discussing the word Yat Kirtanam, so also Lord Chaitanya recommended that simply by glorifying the Lord's holy name, a tremendous change of heart can take place, by which the complete misunderstanding between the human nations created by politicians can at once be extinguished. Cheto darpanam arjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam shreya kairava chandrika vitaranam vidyavadu jivanam Anandam Burivardhanam Patipadam Purnam Vitaswadanam Sarvadma Snapanam Param Vijayate Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. And after the nations created by the politicians can at once be extinct, and after the extinction of the fire of misunderstanding, other prophets will follow. The destination is to go back home, back to Godhead, as we have several times discussed in these pages. According to the cult of devotion, generally known as the Vaishnava cult, there is no bar against anyone's advancing in the matter of God realization. A Vaishnava is powerful enough to turn into a Vaishnava, even the Kirata, etc. As above mentioned, in the Bhagavad Gita 9.32, it is said by the Lord that there is no bar to becoming a devotee of the Lord, even for those who are labor-born or women, Shudras or Vaishyas. And by becoming a devotee, everyone is eligible to return home back to Godhead. The only qualification is that one takes shelter of a pure devotee of the Lord who has some knowledge in transcendental science, the only qualification is that one takes shelter of a pure devotee of the Lord who has thorough knowledge in the transcendental science of Krishna. Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Anyone from any part of the world who becomes well conversant in the science of Krishna becomes a pure devotee and a spiritual master for the general mass of people, and may reclaim them by purification of heart. Though a person be even the most sinful man, he can at once be purified by the systematic contact with a pure Vaishnava. A Vaishnava therefore can accept a bona fide disciple from any part of the world without any consideration of caste and creed, and promote him by regulative principles to the status of a pure Vaishnava, who is transcendental to the Brahminical culture. The system of caste or varnashram dharma is no longer regular even amongst the so-called followers of the system, nor is it now possible to reestablish the institutional function in the present context of social, political, and economic revolution. Without any reference to the particular custom of a country, one can be accepted to the Vaishnava cult spiritually, and there is no hindrance in the transcendental process. So by the order of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the cult of Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita can be preached all over the world, reclaiming all persons willing to accept the transcendental cult. Such cultural propaganda by the devotees will certainly be accepted by all persons who are reasonable and inquisitive without any particular bias for the custom of the country. The Vaishnava never accepts another Vaishnava on the basis of birthright, just as he never thinks of the deity of the Lord in a temple as an idol. And to remove all doubts in this connection, Srila Shukadeva Goswami has invoked the blessings of the Lord, who is all-powerful, Prabhu Vishnave Namaha. As the all-powerful Lord accepts the humble service of his devotee in devotional activities of the Archana, his form as the worshipable deity in the temple, similarly, the body of a pure Vaishnava changes transcendentally at once when he gives himself up to the service of the Lord and is trained by a qualified Vaishnava. The injunctions of Vaishnava regulation in this connection runs as follows. Arche Vishnu Shila Dhir Guru Shu Nara Matir Vaishnave Jati Budhi Shri Vishnu Namni Shabda Samanya Budhi, etc. Quote, one should not consider the deity of the Lord as worshipable in the temple to be as worshipped in the temple to be an idol, nor should one consider the authorized spiritual master an ordinary man, nor should one consider a pure Vaishnava to belong to a particular caste, etc. End quote. Padma Purana. The conclusion is that the Lord, being all-powerful, can under any and every circumstance accept anyone from any part of the world, either personally or through his bona fide manifestation as a spiritual master. Lord Chaitanya accepted many devotees from communities other than the Varnashramites, and he himself declared to teach us that he does not belong to any caste or social order of life, but that he is the eternal servant of the Lord, who maintains the damsels of Vrindavan, Lord Krishna. That is the way of self-realization.
This purport was written after Prabhupada began the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. First canto, Prabhupada wrote when he was in India, before he had come to the West. He brought the first canto with him. But by this time, he had already begun spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. And he had experience that all types of persons from all different backgrounds could be attracted and could take up Krishna consciousness. It could become pure devotees. I remember Prabhupada wrote me a letter about Russia. He said the Russians want to join us. They also are not happy with their situation there. And sure enough, the Russians have joined us, joined the Krishna consciousness movement. And the Chinese and the Islamic, the Turks, all these different groups. Kirata generally also refers to the Africans. So everyone is included in that everyone can become a devotee of Krishna. It doesn't matter what his background is. He simply has to take shelter of a Vaishnava, pure Vaishnava, coming in line of devotional service. And under his direction, he'll be purified by his activities and by proper consciousness. And then he can be considered a Vaishnava, and he can become a guru. To become a guru is not something unimaginable or impossible. If one learns the science and he passes it on to others, then he becomes a teacher, becomes a guru. And he can accept disciples all over the world. And Srila Rupa Goswami describes that qualifications that Vacha Vegam, Manasa Krodha Vegam, Jiva Vegam, Udaro Pasta Vegam, Etan, Yo Vidyatakama. Yeah, I forget the rest. One who controls his anger, his words, his tongue, belly, and genitals, speech, yeah. Achavegam, manasakro, the mind, krodha, anger, and tongue, belly, and genitals, he can become a spiritual master and can accept disciples all over the world. This is also happening. This is quite revolutionary because up until this time in modern era, it wasn't considered possible that people from outside of India could become Vaishnavas. In fact, it was sometimes said that if a sannyasi were to travel across the ocean, he would no longer be a sannyasi because he'd become contaminated by the people of those regions, and thus he'd fall down despite going. This was the theory at the time of Prabhupada's crossing the ocean. Of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they didn't think like that. They understood. But because there were some attempts earlier by some Vaishnavas, sent by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to England. And they went there and they met some people, but they didn't seem to have any success or any major success. So that was also considered that these people who are addicted to meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex, they can't become devotees. One Marquis of Zetland in England, he was met by these devotees who had gone to England, and he understood a little bit about history. So he said, can you make me a Brahmana? And they said, yes, we can make you a Brahmana if you agree to follow these 4 principles. And he said, it's impossible. I can't. This is our life. He considered these 4 things to be his life: intoxication, eating, gambling, and illicit sex. So, but it's been proven now that it's not true. Everyone can become a devotee. Doesn't matter what the background is. If they're in the human species, they can become devotees. And they can become spiritual masters. They can be given Brahman initiation. They can be given sannyas. It was quite interesting when the first Western devotees came to India. Prabhupada dubbed them with the name his dancing white elephants, because it was such a shock to the people of India that Westerners could become Vaishnavas. But it happened, and it's happening now. And it just goes to show that how strong the Bhagavatam is, because this was written 5,000 years ago. And Shukadeva Goswami was talking about something that at that time was somewhat unthinkable. How can all these people from all over the world whose activities are completely against all the principles of Vaishnavism, how can they become Vaishnavas? But the answer is that the heart becomes cleansed by chanting the names of the Lord. Prabhu Vishnave Namaha, the great power of Vishnu. Vishnu, his name, his fame, all his pastimes, they're all transcendently powerful. And they purify. Even Lord Chaitanya, when he appeared at that time, it was considered that if someone was born in a low family, even if they're lower caste of Hinduism, what to speak of outside of Hinduism, like if they were born in a Mohammedan family, Haridas Thakur, his name before he got the name Haridas Thakur was it was a typical Mohammedan name. But he became, by Lord Chaitanya's mercy and by the mercy of Advaita Acharya and other great devotees, he became the Namacharya, the professor or the leader of chanting the holy name of the Lord. And this was not accepted by, not only was it not accepted by some members of the Hindu faith, but even the Brahmins didn't accept. You see in Jagannath Puri, even today, they don't allow persons who are not born in so-called Hindu families to enter the temple. They consider them too impure. And they don't feel they can ever become purified. But Lord Chaitanya did not agree with that, although he recognized that birth is not the consideration. Still, he did not want to create a disturbance, so therefore he suggested that they just not go in the temple, not to create a disturbance, but that they, like in the case of Sanatana Goswami and Haridas Thakur, they could offer their obeisances to the chakra on top of the temple. And that would be the same as going in, see the deity. So one can do that. It doesn't have to make a big social scene. Out of humility, they did not want to impose themselves going into the temple just because Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's association. They didn't feel that was right. But now it's understood that no matter what background one comes from, it's not a bar, it's not a restriction. Everyone can become a devotee and reach Krishna consciousness all over the world.
Thank you, Maharaj. The Krishna consciousness movement is for everyone. Previously, all of these races and nations that were mentioned in this verse were living under the Vedic culture. That means all of them were in knowledge, in Krishna consciousness. But there's a hint in here where there's a personality that's mentioned. Lord Parashuram. Lord Parashuram is an incarnation of Krishna, who comes and he annihilates 21 generations of Kshatriyas for their sinful behavior, and he basically chases them out of Bharata. So then they end up in different places, and so we can see that actually that there's so many civilizations. Actually, every civilization, you go the Greeks, the African civilizations, Native Americans, so all the indigenous civilizations, Mayans, Aztecs, the Norse civilizations, and the so on and so forth. That they've all got all these traces of Vedic culture. So many demigod worship, Zeus, Indra, so many connections that are there, sacrifices that they perform, their own culture like that. But it's not complete because more or less they've been disconnected from the Brahminical culture. But yeah, in this day and age in Kali, the environment has been set so that Sri Harinam Prabhu can eradicate all of this ignorance, and we can be reestablished in our original culture. Anyways, it's about time. Any devotees have any questions? Yes, Jagannath Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So I'm just wondering what the chanting of the holy name can do for us. If you could kindly answer this, I'd really appreciate it.
Yeah, Lord Chaitanya puts it nicely. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. It cleanses the heart because the heart has been contaminated because we're eternal spiritual beings, servants of Krishna. Jivara Swarupa Hoy Krishnara Nitya Das. Krishnara Tatashta Shakti Veda Ved Prakash. So we're part and parcels of Krishna, his superior energy. But somehow or other we've become attracted to his external energy. And because we've been associating with that energy for so long, we've basically we've acquired so many identities that are other than our real identity. And in that illusion, when we're thinking we're something that we're not, we're suffering so much. Suffering is happening. We're doing so many abominable activities. But the underlying dormant desire for Krishna consciousness is always there in the living entity. He's always actually seeking that relationship with Krishna, that most satisfying, fulfilling thing. But in that ignorance, he's thinking, I'm an American, so let me go do that by going to the bar. Let me go to the clubs, let me eat meat, let me do these things. So the chanting of the holy name, it purifies all those wrong conceptions about reality. And then we get to experience the real thing, the real bliss, the real relationship with reality, with Krishna. So, yeah. Yes, Maharaj.
Thinking that we're separate from Krishna is a disease. And unless the disease is cured, it completely contaminates the whole body. And then one cannot live properly. So we can think of it like that. Not being Krishna conscious is a disease. And to cure the disease, Enechio Shadi Maya Nashi Baralagi, Harinama Mahamantra Lao Tumi Magi. Medicine is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So it is the only way to get free from the contamination of thinking that we're separate from God or Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Panchakalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanam vaishnavibhyo namo namaha.
Jiva Vegam Udaropastadegam Etan Vegam Yo Vishaheta Dira Sarama Bimam Prativim Shishat.